So we're Tin and Ed, and we're gonna. I hope Neil's antenna doesn't explode. So we.
Oh, that's it. We're done.
So we should have warned him first. So we're going to present using this sort of software, which we actually use to create a lot of our work, and it's just a sort of live projection software, and we like to use it because it sort of really represents the way that we sort of work, which is that it's sort of fluid, playful, and constantly sort of in motion. So we're Tin and Ed. We're from Melbourne, Australia, but we live in New York now.
These are our sort of digital avatars.
Yep.
So we're kind of really interested in being obviously in the real world, but then how what we do kind of relates to the digital world.
Yes, and our digital selves are much better dancers than our actual real selves. And so we're going to sort of talk about what the benefits of the digital sort of space is. One of them is dancing, and what the benefits of being in the real world is as well. And our work sort of has always delved in and out of the real world and the digital world, and more we're sort of playing in around this space where these two places meet, and that's sort of the space that we're really interested in at the moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
First of all, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, and we are honestly really so happy to be here. I mean, we've just had the best time, going. We went into someone's house last night, and it was
that we're invited. It's not like we broke in.
And no, we've just had the best time here. And thanks everyone for coming.
So we're going to talk through some of the projects that we've done, sort of weaving in and out of this physical and digital sort of space. Click. We've only got one clicker. And what we're really interested in, what we've always been sort of interested in, is the way that everything is sort of connected. We believe in the interconnectivity of everything, whether it's art, design, nature, technology, work, play, the universe, everything. And our work really is motivated by our curiosity about what those connections are and how we can sort of find, discover, and share those connections with others as well. So we'll start by, we're sort of breaking this talk into three sort of sections.
Yeah, so we're breaking it into sort of talking about, first of all, the physical world, and then the digital world in terms of what we kind of make, and then kind of the convergence of that.
Yeah. So the first part of our talk, we're just going to talk about a little bit about some physical sort of projects that we've sort of created, which are sort of basically IRL, sort of physical sort of installations. We studied visual communication, so we're graphic designers, but our sort of curiosity has always sort of led us to a space where we're sort of doing a lot of working in other sort of forms now as well, and something that we're completely, we're science nerds completely, and I think if we weren't doing graphic design or weren't designers, we would actually, I'd want to be marine biologists. And
I think I would want to be on the International Space Station and just floating around. Yeah.
So we're always trying to bring these ideas of science and space and nature into our work, and it's always a starting point for a lot of our projects. Because we really believe that we're all sort of connected and we're not separate from nature or the universe, we're really a part of it. And that includes our cities and our technology and all that sort of stuff. It's all sort of connected, So this first project, Inflatable Futures, is a project that we created for kids, and we love creating projects for kids, actually, because they're sort of so much more connected sometimes to these ideas than we are as older people. And again, sort of taking inspiration from nature, we sort of built these inflatable sort of sculptures, the first one being a distant planet. So we tried to create the landscape of an unknown planet, sort of being inspired by forms in nature, though, still.
Yeah, so kind of, specifically looking at fungi and mushrooms, and sort of taking that as inspiration, and then sort of, we really like to sort of sketch really quickly, and these are some of those sort of sketches, and then from those sketches, sort of iterating in 3D and kind of thinking about how spatially those sketches kind of translate.
Yeah, and so these are like renders that we've sort of just put through, so obviously we don't work this quickly. This took quite a while, but it's when we sort of see it like this, it sort of starts to look like the way that a planet would evolve or organisms would evolve, and they sort of change form and adapt and start to sort of shape themselves in sort of interesting sort of ways. And so in that sort of using that sort of mode of that process, we sort of created this planet.
Yeah, so a lot of what we do is sort of pre-visualization. So before we go into actually kind of making something, we really kind of work with collaborators and manufacturers to figure out exactly how to sort of make these kind of crazy things come to life.
Yeah, and so once it's done, it sort of starts to bloom almost like a mushroom, and that sort of well, if there was audio, it would just be me sort of screaming because we're really excited, and then it becomes an inflatable playscape that kids can sort of explore. And we wanted to create these forms which were sort of the project was really about encouraging kids to embrace the unknown. There's a kid who almost steps on another baby's head, I think, in there somewhere. And really we wanted to create a form that was sort of new and hadn't been seen by these kids before. It wasn't like something familiar to them, and because of that, some kids were afraid of it. But the idea was really to create something that was sort of, that could be, that kids could be scared of, but they can overcome that fear to sort of explore this space.
Yeah, and this kind of project, it was very fun to sort of make, but we also had to make sure that it was safe. And there were lots of, it's often why sort of bouncing castles look like bouncing castles, because of all of the parameters. So we really tried to have fun within those constraints. But one of the constraints was that we had to have we
get like a safety report every day, which is the worst thing to get, as a designer. Essentially, it's sort of just like, oh, so today no one died, great. But mostly it was just like two kids, bumped their heads together and, there was a bit of blood or whatever. But
this actually led to our favourite review of our work of all time.
Yes.
This was the safety report. Vomit on bouncing castle due to extreme excitement.
And so that's sort of what we try and create with our work. We want people to vomit from extreme excitement. Yeah. That's us. We were probably the only adults allowed on it, actually, because it was created for kids, specifically, it was engineered for kids. And so it was a series of sculptures, and they're sort of fun, sort of sculptural sort of forms, but we're also trying to sort of educate kids about the future and empowering them to sort of believe that the future is sort of up to them. This sculpture here is sort of introducing them to the ideas of inflatable technology, which is something that's used for space travel. There's an inflatable habitat attached to the
International Space Station?
Yeah, at the moment. So, this is large sort of inflatable habitat that we created. Again, it's sort of more informed by sort of natural forms. And this is a wormhole that's actually the shape of a worm. And again, it's mathematically, theoretically possible, but we've never found one. And it probably wouldn't look like this either. But again, we sort of encourage kids to go through this space and sort of discover what's on the other side, which is in this case, just the other side of the shopping centre. But inside there was like some things that they could discover as well.
And aliens actually appear a lot in our work. We love aliens. We think it's kind of a fun sort of idea to sort of play with. But there is a sort of serious side to us sort of thinking about that, the idea of the outsider. And obviously aliens are kind of like the ultimate sort of outsider. And
because they're from outside. Outer space. And we've always felt a little bit like outsiders, so we've sort of always been sort of interested in this idea of aliens.
Yeah. So this was sort of about the idea of like trying to help kids to understand that you don't need to be sort of afraid of the unknown. And
whether really, it's someone from another country or another planet.
Yeah, and so we really encouraged the kids to go and find this alien and go and kind of give it a hug. And I think that idea of even if you are a little bit scared, to really try and sort of break down that boundary. And I think for us, in terms of thinking about the unknown, I think the unknown in our practice is the most fertile place, and we love the unknown. And I feel like it's not always sort of presented in that way. It's presented like a negative. And if we can sort of encourage kids to sort of embrace the unknown, I feel like that would be great.
Yeah. It feels like it's come up quite a lot at the conference as well. So we'll just go through these bits. And then so we created a book as well, which actually explores all these ideas that we're sort of talking about. And on the last page, the book says, in the future, we'll all live together as one with all beings on Earth and throughout the universe. And again, sort of bringing in these ideas of, how we should see each other and sort of see the world, and that we sort of should just all embrace each other. Yeah. So this next project, we hope people don't vomit from because it's a restaurant space. But again, we're sort of inspired by, like a lot of the work that we sort of create, we're trying to sort of create ways that people can perceive time and space scales beyond our immediate sort of experience of things, which is why we really like to sort of explore these ideas of, from the micro to the macro, really small sort of things to like really huge things as well. So this spiral structure is something that we're really drawn to because it's a fractal and it sort of can be found in everything, from plants and animals to galaxies and weather systems and everything like that.
And at its very simplest, it is just kind of arrays of a simple object. And so sort of taking that idea and kind of saying, like, how can we create something spatially, but just through simple sort of arrays. So in this example is a 2D kind of array, and then thinking about how can we sort of, from that simple form kind of and arraying in 3D space, how can we start to create more complex forms?
Yeah. And so we took those really simple blocks and sort of create these arrays throughout and sort of wove it throughout this sort of restaurant space. And the idea was just to be, you'd create this sort of little universe which completely disrupted your spatial perception. Everything was sort of patterned. And yeah, so the blocks were really built. They're really simple. They're sort of just basic blocks. And then we created this sort of restaurant space, which was just also mirrored completely, which created even more complexity as these forms sort of reflected. Infinitely reflected back on itself. And there were like smells and there was a lot. There was a lot. It was just like
plus you're supposed to be eating at the same time.
Yeah, it was disrupting all your senses essentially. So yeah, we had like Cut Copy did the music for the space, and Bomba did the food. Yeah. So yeah, this is more sort of images of the space. We worked with a lighting designer as well to again sort of make it even more intense. So that's a couple of physical sort of projects that we sort of worked on, and we're going to talk a little bit now about some more digital sort of based projects that we work on as well. With the first one is a project we did at the digital. So the first one is a project that we did working with a lot of sort of technology. We had a whole team of engineers and developers and technologists who sort of knew way more what they were doing than us. And we're lucky enough to work with them. And the project was a performance at the Sydney Opera House in Sydney. And it sort of started, in terms of what we wanted to create, was sort of the idea sort of started because we sort of made this connection between the way music is created in loops and cycles in nature. Like there's actually, just cycles in the universe, the way that the sun sort of rotates, planets' life cycles, the cycles of the water system, like all these different sort of cycles. And we wanted to connect these two together in a live sort of performance.
So what we found kind of really interesting when we were working with Charles Murdoch is, that kind of direct relationship, and because it was all kind of generated live, we were able to connect every element of his music to a visual element, and connecting his loops with our loops.
Yeah, so it was this synesthetic sort of experience. We used 20 projectors, each of his. OSC data was taken from his live performance and was sort of generating these images sort of live. The flower sort of blossoming and dying was sort of affected directly by Oscar Keesung, who's singing right now. So as he sort of sung, it sort of controlled the life and the death of the flower. And so each audio element was connected to some sort of visual element. Yeah. So this is really made possible because we're working using, Resolume, which is a system which is a live, real-time sort of platform. We sort of take this idea into things like branding, which we still do as well. And this project for Opulent, they sort of manage musicians, and their job is really to amplify, the artists that they work with.
Yeah. So we were thinking about amplification and resonance, and then also sort of real-time, like how can we apply this stuff in a live environment. Obviously, a lot of the music is created in a live environment. So thinking about, also this identity will live mostly in a digital world. So, maybe we could sort of play with that sort of idea.
So we, instead of designing this in, Photoshop or this identity in these programs that we usually use, we used Resolume to do it. And what allowed us to do is create an identity that is completely sort of reactive to live audio input. So if you haven't noticed, it's reacting, to our live sort of voices at the moment. And so sort of relating how, audio can sort of connect with visual sort of elements. And whenever you see this identity, it's always been sort of reactive to some sort of sound input, whether it's live or pre-recorded.
And we wanted to create something really flexible for them. So it could be live input, can be pre-recorded input. It'll obviously go onto all their social and website.
Yeah.
But the basic idea is just to be able to play with sort of live audio.
Yeah. So using, again, this program that we use a lot for, this project here, we're commissioned to do a 100-metre-long mural in Melbourne. And we didn't want to create it by ourselves. We're always trying to find ways to work with others and to bring other people together into our work to complete the work. We're members of AGI, which is this international design club thing. And so we asked a bunch of the other members to contribute elements, and all the members are like complete heroes to us. You know, Milton Glaser submitted a piece, Stefan Sagmeister. I think they've all spoken here at Design Indaba. But we had 20 designers from around the world contribute visual elements to this work, essentially. And
yeah, so this was actually a sort of print final sort of thing was a print outcome, and in a sense we're sort of using this software that we know, but we're kind of hacking it to be able to do a print sort of outcome. But what we loved about it was essentially what we were doing was sort of creating the system. So we created all these sort of parameters and then put all the elements, all the artworks into this system and press play, and it basically just
generated infinite amounts of compositions for us. And for us, it was like a speculative sort of project. I mean, with machine learning and automation and all these sort of things, you know, what will our role as designers be, you know, in the future? Because robots and computers will probably design better than us, you know. So our role, potentially, it was just a speculation, could be that we become more like curators and we sort of create the systems and we create ways that things can be generated, but we're not creating the compositions directly ourselves.
Yeah, so essentially we had millions of sort of outcomes, and then from that we can kind of choose what we feel works and what we feel doesn't.
Yeah, so it's a completely sort of collaborative mural using generative sort of technology to create.
And we did find that kind of the idea of like the technology actually brought us all together, and it actually really helped to create a piece that was...
it wasn't just ours, it was everyone's.
Yeah, it was everyone's.
And it was then for the city as well.
Yeah.
So that's some more pictures of it. And this project here is a music video that we created for a friend of ours earlier in his career when he didn't have any budget. So we wanted to, but we still had really grand sort of ideas, and we wanted to simulate all the different types of motion in the universe, from subatomic particles to well, we just wanted to create all the motion, but using ping pong balls. So yeah, from subatomic particles to the rotation of planets to sort of weather systems to swarm theory and human motion, everything, but just using ping pong balls and sort of filming live action ping pong balls. So essentially, this is a whole bunch of 100 ping pong balls sort of floating around, sort of simulating a swarm, so swarm theory, and then it sort of goes into more complex sort of human sort of motion. So it sort of comes here into, we worked with a choreographer and sort of, yeah, created this sort of motion with a dance sort of performance. Yeah, so this whole project is sort of done in camera, but then we sort of took that footage and digitized it so it feels like motion graphics. And we're really interested in that sort of idea that, you know, about the analog and the digital and how these two different things can, you know, sometimes it's not so obvious, and how we can go in and out of those two worlds.
This is the very high-tech way that we made this. If you guys haven't tried this, this is hours of fun.
So this is us recreating the sort of kinetic, I guess the vibrations of subatomic particles with a hairdryer, and so we had to find different ways to create all these different types of motion, essentially. Rotations of planets is just a ball on a string.
Yeah, and we got to kind of nerd out as well. We love YouTube. Anything we don't know, we just kind of type it in, and I find that kind of amazing because you can literally learn anything. And I think actually that's a little bit of a point for us. Is we try not, even if we don't know how to do something, either we try to find someone that does know how to do it, or we ask YouTube.
Yeah. YouTube is our best friend.
So we made these sort of motion tracking balls that you could kind of stick to the body.
And we stuck it to a friend who's a choreographer, and she sort of moved around. And, and that sort of created that motion. So that's some of our work that sort of more lives in the digital sort of world, I guess. But right now, what we're really interested in, you know, the intersection and the interplay between these two sort of spaces, you know, our physical sort of world and this digital sort of space, which is, you know, I think that this is where the world is moving towards, and it's something that we're very much embracing. I think it can be easy to be scared of it. So, but we're trying to find ways where it can be not so scary and sort of a fertile space for sort of creation and connection and bringing people together.
Yeah, so this is just some quick sort of AR testing that we did, and what we like about, sort of the idea of bringing the real world into the digital world and kind of almost out back again is that you're not constrained by gravity, and
money.
there's sort of infinite possibilities with that.
So we can build these sort of installations which we were building before physically, but we can actually do it without gravity and without production cost, and these sort of things. So right now we're sort of, these are just simple explorations and plays. This one here is sort of exploring. There's no sound for this, but augmented sort of reality can also be sound as well. And so we're sort of taken stem files or parts of different songs and assign them to these different objects spatially. And as you move through this space towards or away from these different objects, you start to create a song.
Yeah, so essentially, for something like this, you actually don't need any visual. You could just be listening to the audio and be moving sort of spatially, physically, and that would start to create music.
Yes, so, and that augmented sort of, I guess this AR sort of space then allows us to sort of use proximity and sort of movement as a way to sort of create new forms of music, I guess. Yeah. This next project is a commission for Nike, and we were actually asked just to do an installation, like a physical sort of installation, which was great, but we're also interested in doing sort of a little bit more with that. So we sort of built this installation.
Oh, sorry, I'm not pressing the clicker. You were like, come
on. Which is actually quite a large installation, and it was for an event that they had called Battle Force.
Which was a basketball event.
Yeah, it's like basketball, but they had like dance and music, and it's like a festival of basketball. But we sort of wanted to sort of integrate some of our sort of generative sort of projection sort of work as well into it. So we used two really powerful projectors, each one of them bigger than each of us, and sort of stacked them and projected, our generative sort of visuals, which again live onto the installation.
Yeah, and what we really like about that is that it really allowed us to bring our installations to life, and also to react to what's sort of happening throughout the day. So using the real-time software, we could just be really sort of playful and just have a bit of fun throughout the day.
And the generative sort of digital stuff that we're sort of working with, it doesn't have to be a flat sort of surface or that sort of space. It can start sort of take physical sort of sculptural sort of form as well. And this is just very simple sort of projection mapping technology.
And I think what we're kind of interested in is what are these sort of possibilities, sort of moving forward, and how do they allow for new ways of communicating, new ways of relating to people, whether that's digitally or physically or a combination of both.
And just new ways of sort of seeing the world as well.
Yeah.
So this last project that we're sort of working on, we're really excited because it's something that we've been working on for a little bit, and we're launching it here at Design Indaba, out in the piazza. It's actually up now, in one of the shipping containers, really close to the really beautiful sculpture of the two dancers, which is quite fortuitous. So you can check it out after this. It's got our it's called We Come in Peace, but it's for us, we're sort of exploring at the moment, 3D scanning technology, and we're really interested in it because for us it's sort of like, for photography, when it first came out, it was sort of like these big sort of devices that you had to be in a studio for, and when it became small enough to sort of leave the studio and sort of take cameras into the world, the way that we sort of took photos changed, and what we captured changed, and the way that we saw the world, changed as well. And so we think that it's a really amazing now that 3D scanning technology is cheap enough that we can afford it, and also everyone here, and also portable enough that we can sort of take it and use it anywhere, anytime.
And again, still being really interested in how this is sort of the idea of how can we take the real world into the digital world. And then actually with this project, bounce it back out into the real world.
Yeah, and then at some point, take it back into the digital world again. And I think we really like how, when we sort of take someone's scan and then we put it into a digital space, then what we can do with it, and then when it comes back out, it can take a new form. So it's like some sort of weird photocopier that sort of just changes things as you go in and out of these different mediums. So we took the scans of people, and we, again, always inspired coming back to this ways and forms in nature. We sort of, and the personalities of the people as well, we sort of resculpted and patterned them, and they sort of almost become like, sometimes we're inspired by, RuPaul, and in the case of our friend Craig, and they sort of become sort of these new forms and shapes and organisms as well. This is Philip, who's in the crowd somewhere here. And we scanned Lee Edelcourt the other day as well, which we're excited to get in. Wade from...
Wade, hello.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Hi. And Lisa as well. So we've got a whole bunch of friends from our travels and sort of resculpted them and recolored them and created these new sort of forms which could be seen as new organisms or aliens or whatever you call them, but they're avatars. And then we sort of took these and so lots and lots, and we're continuing to add to this project. This is an ongoing sort of project. And we sort of put them into the virtual sort of space and sort of taught them to dance. Is there music?
There should be audio.
Yeah. So this project, this is actually... Yeah.
There is audio, yes.
So this project, this is actually a pre-render, but the actual work itself is actually made in Unity, which is a games engine. They usually use it to make video games, and we're interested in exploring that sort of platform because video games are quite often, I guess they're used mostly to make games which quite often are like about shooting each other and killing things. And we wanted to use this as a medium to actually create a different sort of experience and a way of coming together and this sort of joy and euphoria of, dancing and partying, I guess. So we're sort of playing with bioluminescence and all these sort of different sort of things as well. And as we develop this project further, because it is this live, real-time sort of environment, we can actually use live sort of inputs, like audio inputs, and we can control how these avatars are behaving using artificial intelligence. So there could be a live DJ, and the way that what they play can affect how these characters dance and how they move and how they behave. And that's what we're sort of developing as we sort of move forward with this sort of project. This is Ed doing some sort of weird booty dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the possibilities that, things that are possible, in this sort of virtual space is sort of what we're sort of exploring at the moment. And it's quite exciting sort of for us. But yeah, you can check that out in the Piazza. And so this, because again, it's a live environment, we can also export it out as a virtual reality experience or an augmented reality experience. This is me. It's just like a short test of just, we can actually dance. You can make an avatar, you can dance with yourself, or this is me dancing with 3 Eds just around the hotel room.
I only have one, right?
Yeah. And obviously I can't dance, as you can see. Let's move to the next slide.
I quite like it. I think it's good. But actually, I will stay on this, actually. No, but what we kind of like is the idea of sort of making something in one environment and then being able to output in many different ways. So the idea that, this can be AR, this can be projected, you can 3D print, and should we move on? We'll move on, okay.
See, this tree can dance better than me. So we're using this technology, and we can scan in anything, not just people. But also, we scanned in this gum tree in Australia when we were home recently. And we're sort of really interested in, where we can take this 3D technology. But ultimately what our work is about is really, this world right now is, there's so many forces sort of acting on us that sort of pulling us all apart, and our work is always about trying to find ways to bring us together, to connect with each other, but also with nature and with the universe, and doing it with technology as well, because it's trying to remove that fear from that, and doing it in a way that's playful and inclusive, and about creating work together.
Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone, and we really appreciate being here today. Thank you.
Cool.